Hello, everybody. This is Justin from the St. Charts. Today, joining me is George Bennett, CEO of Rainbow Rare Earths. Thank you very much for joining us, George.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you. So, before we get started and go through your projects, I thought it'd be good for everybody to have an overview of rare earth metals because it's a massive topic of conversation at the moment, and not just in the press. This is straight from the top. Donald Trump is talking about it. I think a lot of the other world leaders are talking about rare earths at the moment, and it seems there is a mad scramble for these leaders to get hold of as much rare earth metals as possible. So, if you could just tell us what are they used for, and why is there a big scramble to get hold of them now?
Okay, so rare earths are essentially 17 elements on the periodic table that all have different properties. And at the moment, when you mine a rare earth deposit, you accumulate all 17 elements in a mixed rare earth concentrate. And that mixed rare earth concentrate then needs to be separated, first of all, cracked, what they call chemically cracked, from a mineral concentrate into a chemical form. And then those rare earths can be separated into the individual rare earth elements, similar to a PGM group of metals. In other words, a platinum group metal basket where you have platinum, rhodium, palladium, a bit of gold, some copper. When you mine them, you get them all together, then you have to smelt them to get the different metals out. Quite similar in rare earths. Now, rare earths, the name is a bit of an anomaly because they're not really rare, but they are rare in economic quantities. Rare earths are beset with difficult grade, low grade generally, difficult mineralogy, and also quite often beset with what they call radionuclides, in other words, uranium and thorium, which makes them quite radioactive and therefore very difficult from an environment point of view. And the rare earths that everybody's chasing in the world today are known as permanent magnet rare earths. Now that's neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium. And these four rare earth elements go into what's known as a permanent magnet. And permanent magnets are critical in the world today across a whole range of technologies that are very, very fundamental to the green transition. In other words, electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids, wind turbines. A wind turbine's got 2 tons of permanent magnets in it per 3 megawatt wind turbine. Every EV's got about 3 to 5 kilograms of permanent magnets per EV, and so is the plug-in hybrid. It's got a similar amount of permanent magnets. And these permanent magnets are very important to create greater power from your motor, which means you have less draw on your battery, which means you can get further range. The other area that permanent magnets are used globally is your consumer electronics, your iPhones, your earpods, your handheld drills.
Headphones as well.
Yeah, correct. All require permanent magnets, and these permanent magnets are used vastly in consumer electronics. Plus, as I said, all those other applications in the green transition. And finally, the new frontier of demand for permanent magnets is going to be in robotics and eVTOLs, electrical, vertical, and takeoff landing vehicles. Now, robotics, forecast by Elon Musk, by 2040, there will be 10 billion on the planet, one for every person. Well, even if I don't believe Mr. Musk's projections, even at 10 or 20% of his projection, in other words, 1 or 2 billion robots by 2040, the amount of permanent magnets that are required in robots are huge. It's 3 to 5 times the quantity required in an electric vehicle. And once again, these eVTOLs, these vertical takeoff and landing taxis, require a huge amount of permanent magnets. Now, just to give you an idea of how real these taxis are, they're starting to operate, as I said, in 4 airports in the US and out of Dubai. And to take an air taxi from LAX to San Diego will take you an hour and a half in a car in traffic. It'll take you 8 minutes in these air taxis, and it'll cost you the same price as an Uber Black. So you can see where there'll be massive demand for this type of mode of transport going forward. So very exciting new frontier for permanent magnets, as well as the existing use of them. And finally, finally, the reason why Donald Trump and lots of the others governments in the world are focusing on permanent magnets is because of the geopolitical tensions that we see that have evolved over the last circa 3 years in definitely around Russia and certainly around China, and these things go into all your sophisticated defense mechanisms require permanent magnets and rare earths. For example, an F-35 fighter jet takes 420 kilograms of rare earths per jet. Your night vision goggles, your heat-seeking missiles, your missile guidance systems, your night vision goggles, your submarines, your tanks, all of these require permanent magnets and rare earths. So from a strategic defense point of view, they are highly, highly sought after. And to rely on what potentially is your biggest enemy, being China, to produce and control 80% of the world's production and 95% of the world's downstream beneficiation of these rare earths, that's a very dangerous place for anybody in the world to be.
Yeah, I mean, I think China has put some sort of tariffs or stops on one or two of those metals, and I think that's probably the reason why Donald Trump suddenly realised that that the supply isn't secure, and they need to sort of find their own supply for future. It's national security, not just for all the gizmos and gadgets we get. It's national security, isn't it? From a defence point of view, they need to have a reliable source, and outside of China.
Yeah, 100% correct. As you say, it's a national defence issue, as well as just supporting the industry. We saw what happened when to the car manufacturers when chips suddenly during the COVID-19 crisis were unavailable. Whole sort of line of car manufacturers ground to a halt. Now we've seen China also. They have weaponized rare earths, and there's an interesting statement made by Xi Jinping 30 years ago in China. He said the Middle East has oil, China has rare earths. And 30 years ago, the Chinese recognized how critical rare earths would be going down the line, and they then went about developing a critical supply to make sure that they controlled the critical supply chain of these rare earth elements and developed the downstream processing, and they would become the dominant player. And the Chinese saw this 30 years ago, and now we see it playing out. And President Trump has been very, very good, I think, and taking this to the rest of the world by saying we're not going to be held ransom by China. We've seen the Chinese put export controls on things like graphite, gallium, germanium, and antimony, and the next thing is they're going to weaponize rare earths as well. And Donald Trump's very worried about this, and that's why he made a statement that he would swap the rare earth elements in Ukraine for some to try and help end this war. What he doesn't realize is that there's no real rare earth deposits in Ukraine that we're aware of, and that's the U.S. Geological Society making that statement. And even if there were rare earths and economic deposit in Ukraine, rare earth or all big mine projects, and especially rare earth projects, on average take 18 to 25 years to get into production. So even if they found an economic deposit in Ukraine tomorrow, you're talking, as I said, 20 years circa before you actually saw production from those deposits. And Trump has been very good in highlighting this and making sure that the US is going to get behind this, and he's talking about mineral diplomacy globally, and he wants America to become very active in this going forward.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, with Ukraine, I mean, even if they if they get this deal with Zelensky, is by the time that they've produced or got a mine in operation, they're going to have fallen behind with the robotics race anyway, aren't they? Unless they can keep the supply. So at the moment, that's the reason why these metals are such big news, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks, months, and a couple of years, whatever, because I think there's going to be a lot of action in this space. I mean, it's not something that investors know, or it's not something investors know too much about or get too excited about, but I think that's going to change. And the more that it's talked about, and I think some things will happen in the market to bring it to investors' attention. So, for me, it's really exciting, and things are moving along nicely. So, just moving along from there. So, you've got two main projects, one in South Africa and one in Brazil. If you could just give us a quick overview of those projects and any other projects.
Yeah, no, I will definitely do that. And just to finish off on the previous point, Donald Trump singled out rare earths in his executive order, which he signed just a couple of weeks ago. So that, as you mentioned, just highlights how important this is, certainly for the US and for Western alliances. That we see that they are going to be focused on trying to develop these projects outside of China. And any good business doesn't rely on one supplier for any component, and that's why it's good to develop outside supply chain, a supply chain outside of China. And just going on to Rainbow now, we are very excited where we sit at the moment. We have two very, very exciting projects and other projects coming down the pipeline, which I'll take your listeners through. In terms of South Africa, in 2021, that was January 21, we secured 35 million tons of phosphogypsum at a place called Phalaborwa in South Africa, which is a well-known mining town. And what's happened for the last 60 years there is that you've got a hard rock carbonatite, which has been mined for phosphate rock. That phosphate rock was then concentrated into a slurry through a flotation process and then pumped next door to a phosphoric acid plant owned by the chemical conglomerate in South Africa called Sasol. Now, when you produce phosphoric acid, which is used for the fertilizer industry globally, as I said, you need this phosphate feed source, which is well known as for phosphoric acid production process, but you add sulfuric acid and you add heat, and then you create a gypsum waste residue. The rare earths that were present in the hard rock, phosphate rock, were upgraded in the concentration process and then which would into the phosphate slurry, which then fed the phosphoric acid plant, and then deported through the phosphoric acid production process into the gypsum waste residue, and now sits on these two stacks at Phalaborwa. So we've got a project that's got a 16-year life. We'll treat 2.2 million tons per annum, and we're going to generate circa 1,900 tons per annum of separated rare earth oxides. And we quite unique in the fact that we are not stopping at producing a rare earth concentrate or mixed rare earth carbonate, which are two steps in rare earth production, but we're going all the way through to separated rare earth oxides. The reason why we're doing this is because, as I've mentioned, those stacks at Phalaborwa are already chemically cracked. So we don't have all the typical processes that you require to get to that stage of rare earth separation. In other words, we don't have any drill and blast to mine the hard rock. We don't have any haul, stockpile, crush, mill, grind, and then through a flotation process produce a mixed rare earth concentrate. Once you've produced that mixed rare earth concentrate, guess what? You add two key ingredients, sulfuric acid and heat, to crack it into a mixed rare earth carbonate, and only then can you go further downstream. So 2/3 of the flow sheet, which is normally associated with the rare earth project, has already taken place at zero cost to Rainbow's project. And that's why we've been independently verified as the highest margin rare earth project and development in the world today. So when we publish our PEA, which is on our website, you'll see that our EBITDA margin was circa 75%, with an IRR, post-tax IRR of over 40%. And we would have produced at spot rare earth pricing in 2022, which was circa $100 a kg for NdPr, and a similar sort of price at the time for dysprosium and terbium, which we also produce out of our project in Phalaborwa. We would have produced circa $190 million of EBITDA per annum on only $300 million of capex to build this project, which is a very, very low capital intensity rare earth project compared to other rare earth projects and developments around the world today, which are going to go to the same stage, which is separated rare earth oxides, which then you feed to a midstream process called metal and alloy, and that metal and excuse me, that metal manufacturing, which goes into that alloy, as I said, feeds your permanent magnet factories. So Rainbow on one of the unique positions that we're going all the way through to separated rare earth oxides without all the associated costs normally seen. In fact, at today's rare earth pricing, which is $60 a kg for NdPr compared to $100 in our PEA, Rainbow would still make $65 million of EBITDA per annum at the moment, which not many rare earth projects in the world can claim that are on development. So this makes Rainbow very unique from that point of view. Do you have any questions at this stage before I talk about Brazil?
No, just going back to at today's pricing, the project will be throwing off EBITDA of $65 million US per annum, and
Correct, yeah.
at the forecast prices, it's going to be 190 US million EBITDA.
At least at forecast prices, sort of 2-3 years out from now. So that's very conservative forecast pricing 2 to 3 years out from now, which is when Phalaborwa should be coming into production, and I'll talk about that slightly later. So you're 100% right. So it just shows that we're at the low point of the rare earth price cycle. Earlier in 2022, the price for neodymium and praseodymium was circa $160 to $180 a kg. So we used spot pricing, which was closer to $100 a kg for neodymium and praseodymium. And as I said, at $60 a kg, which is, you can see, from 160, 180 down to 60, that's a massive drop that we've seen since 2022. We would still be profitable, which shows that we'll be very resilient and confirms that very high margin we have in our project in Phalaborwa, and which makes Rainbow quite unique to other projects and developments around the world today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, $65 million US is a lot of money. But if we're talking $200 million once the market picks up again, which is inevitable, really, isn't it? Given all the focus on it.
Correct.
And with what's going to potentially happen over in China, and I think $200 million is going to be an astonishing amount of free cash flow producing the project. So
I might like to add there, sorry, Justin, I might like to add there that those forecasts have historically been based on wind turbine, EV, plug-in hybrid demand, and consumer electronic demand. Only now are people starting to realize the explosive growth of robotics and eVTOLs, which is going to support their price forecast even further, even stronger.
Yeah. The other thing is how much of these have been used in the war in Ukraine. I mean, there's an awful lot of. To me, that war is all about drones, and drones must take up an awful lot. And I think that all these countries now are going to start investing heavily in drone technology for any future conflict that it comes about. So, as you say, I think the prices and what's going to happen in the industry altogether is going to be very interesting to watch over the next few years. So we've got South Africa, which I've got an NPV of I think $616 million US.
Circa that, yeah.
Yeah, and Brazil. If you just tell us a little bit about Brazil.
So, sort of 18 odd months ago, I recognized how good our PEA was going to be on the Phalaborwa rare earth project. So I started trying to identify similar opportunities around the world. And I found an asset or a project in Brazil called Uberaba, which is near the town of, or the city of Uberaba in Minas Gerais province in Brazil. And basically, we've got a carbon copy of what we have in South Africa. We've got a hard rock carbonatite being mined for phosphate hard rock, which I know have got rare earths in them to not economic to mine just for the hard rock, but once you turn it into a phosphate slurry, feed it into a phosphoric acid plant, and then generate a gypsum waste residue, you'll have rare earths sitting in this gypsum. And I identified this project, which is owned by Mosaic, which is a global fertilizer producer. They got a market cap of circa 14 to 16 billion US dollars, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. I was able to identify this opportunity and go with my technical director, Dave Dodd, and go and say to them, guys, we know they're going to be rare earths in your phosphogypsum here. We'd like to do a deal with you where we would jointly develop extracting rare earths out of your phosphogypsum stack, and we take the rare earths, which I know will be present in your phosphogypsum. So on the back of that, we agreed to sign a 50-50 MOU where we would jointly develop the rare earths that sit in the phosphogypsum in Uberaba, and very quickly we sent samples to SGS in Toronto, which came back confirming that not only is the grade of the phosphogypsum at Uberaba even higher than Palabora. So at Palabora, we've got a grade of 0.44% total rare earth oxides, TREO, which seems low when you compare it to a hard rock hard rock rare earth project. But when you consider this is all above the ground, it's cracked already, 60% of our flow sheet is at zero cost to the project. That makes it a very high grade deposit. And if you compare that to ionic clays, which they mine in China and Myanmar, it's 6 to 10 times higher grade than ionic clay deposits, and they don't have the same recovery that we have in Palabora. In Palabora, we're getting plus minus 65% recovery, overall recovery of the rarest out of our phosphogypsum stacks. And this against recovery from a typical ionic clay deposit that, as I say, they mine in China and elsewhere in the world, where you've got a 40 to 50% recovery. So we got, circa 50 plus better recoveries than an ionic clay deposit, and we've got very, very high grade. So this is also adding to why these type of assets are attractive to Rainbow. So with that, I went and signed a deal with Mosaic in Brazil, and we're busy developing that project. We've had great. it's on our website. We've not only published the grade of their phosphogypsum, we've also published leach results that we're getting, which are very, very good. And these results, we're busy developing the flow sheet, which we will then take into an economic PEA study with Mosaic very shortly. And as I said, so we've been doing this development, and we've been doing this development a lot quicker than what we were able to do at Palabora, because we're learning from the IP that we've developed in-house from the Palabora project. Remember, we only started working on this project in January 21. We were able to complete a PEA in October 22. Now, if this was a typical mining project, you would take 5 years of drilling before you could get to a PEA stage. We got there within 2 years at Palabora. We are going to be completing our bankable feasibility study by the end of 2025. That's within 4 years of getting hold of this project, and we're forecasting to be in production hopefully at the end of 27, the beginning of 28. So you're looking circa 7-year timeline, which is sort of going at lightning speed compared to typical mining project that we see in the space.
Okay, George. So this is the Brazil. You're anticipating to be in production by the end of 2027.
No, that's in Palabora.
This is South Africa. Okay.
Yeah, this is South Africa. I'm just highlighting how quickly we've got there. And we're applying all that to Brazil. So the timeline to get Brazil into production will be even quicker than Palabora. And very importantly, the Brazilian opportunity is a live stack. In other words, they are currently putting onto their stack every year between 4.5 and 5 million tons of fresh phosphogypsum. And Mosaic have agreed with Rainbow's strategy, which is that, listen, why don't we take the fresh feed from the phosphoric acid producing plant that you currently have, we'll put it into our chemical plant to extract the rare earths, and we'll give you the fresh feed back. And this fresh feed, you'll then be able to, will then match what you're selling into the agricultural farmers in Brazil, which basically they're selling between 4 to 4.5 million tons of phosphogypsum into the agri industry right now, and they're looking to expand that to match the fresh feed that's coming onto the stack. And that means we won't have to stack the phosphogypsum as we've treated it, like we have to do at Palabora. We have to build new stacks, but in Brazil, we anticipate we won't have to have the cost of building a new stack and the OPEX of running a stack. It'll go straight to match their agri sales. So in other words, it'll be roughly twice the size of Palabora and twice the size of the production of Palabora. In fact, even slightly higher production because the grade is so much higher. So yeah, we're very excited about the Brazilian opportunity that is coming down our pipeline very, very quickly after what we've seen at Palabora.
It sounds amazing, and it's just two absolutely fantastic, standout projects. So I tell you, I just flip to the chart for the viewers to have a look at, and I'm just going to do a long-term chart here. So if I just get that up as a share, hopefully that's going to come up now. So here, George, what I've got here is your chart, and this is a weekly chart. And for those people who follow me, they will know that I like to work in waves. And for me, we've sort of had one wave here. So I think that you sort of took over the helm sort of, March 2020, something around there.
It was sort of late 2019, yes.
2019. Okay, so since then you've gone from sort of 1.3 pence all the way up to sort of 21 pence level. And for me, I'm just draw that out. So that for me is wave one. We've had a corrective wave, which is sort of there. And for me, the most obvious place here, because I work in waves, and for me, markets always work in three waves. So once you've sort of broken and held above sort of 20 pence level, I think this red box would be active, which is the share price could go anywhere from 27 to 39 pence. Not saying it's going to stop there. We'll probably get a bit of a breather and then probably another leg up at a later stage. But to me, the chart looks really good. So I just thought I'd share that. There we go. Let's switch back here. And so, the projects look outstanding. The financial aspects of them look really interesting, and they're huge projects. So I think we talked about sort of. I was going to ask about indication of profits.
Yes.
But I think we've covered that off pretty much. With regards to Brazil, so you think that the MPV could be as big as, if not bigger than, the South Africa?
It should be definitely bigger than South Africa, in my personal opinion. Once we've done the work, so remember we've got a lot of experience from what we've seen in our Palabora project, and my gut feel, which I might say is normally quite good. I know that the APV of this project, I would expect it to be even a lot higher than that. What the Brazilian project will be a lot higher than what we see in South Africa, and also because we've created this IP with phosphogypsum globally. We've had an approach by a Canadian junior. He wants to do a similar deal with us, as we've done with Mosaic in Brazil, because they've got a hard rock carbonatite. They're going all the way through to phosphoric acid production, and then going to be producing a gypsum waste residue. And we're busy assessing that project in terms of running tests and mineralogy tests to see if we've got a similar opportunity in Canada. And we've been approached by OCP in Morocco, the Saudis in Saudi Arabia, as well as Indians in India. And they've got phosphogypsum stacks, but these are much, much lower grade in the sense that they're sedimentary or marine deposits. So these are long-term R&D opportunities that we see potentially unfolding in Morocco, Saudi Arabia, and India. But the point is that these are opportunities that are coming to Rainbow. And even though they are very long-term, there are opportunities which gives Rainbow a long-term pipeline of future ability to potentially make sure that we can extract rares out of those phosphogypsum assets that we see in those three jurisdictions I've mentioned. So very, very long-term out the money, but definitely opportunities that Rainbow has its foot on. And I think that's a good position for any company to be in when you're looking at trying to build a global business here and a multi-million-dollar business. I might add that just with Palabora and Uberaba, which we know will definitely go into production, those two projects will alone produce a similar quantity of separated rare earth oxides, the permanent magnet rare earth oxides that you see produced out of Lynas in Australia. And Lynas in Australia is a $5 billion market cap or $45 billion market cap business as it stands. So that's the global opportunity for Rainbow that we're building and we see going forward.
Yeah, it's astonishing, isn't it? Wow. So if I just go to the capex required to get, as we talked, South Africa could be in production by the end of 2027. What sort of capex is going to be required, and how will that be funded?
So we're looking at circa $320 million, $325 million of capex, which, as I say, is low for the nature of this project. And it's on our website. Your listeners can go and Google it, and you'll see that we signed the deal about 18 months ago with TechMet, which is funded partly by the DFC. That's the Development Finance Corporation out of Washington, which is what President Trump's also alluded to in his executive orders, that he wants to make the DFC sovereign wealth fund of the US. And these guys invest in projects outside of the US. And they've committed $50 million of equity into Project Co at Rainbow. So, and this commitment was reaffirmed on CNN just last week. They spoke about America's investment into the rare earth project in South Africa, which is Phalaborwa. And as I said, and we know that the project economics and the EBITDA margin supports about a 2/3 debt. So we're looking at circa $210 million of debt. And the DFC have indicated to Rainbow that they'd like to be part of that debt package as well. So we'll be going into negotiations with them to be part of that debt package. And the balance will be equity. So we're looking for circa just over $110 million of equity. And we've already had $50 million committed by the US government. So, we are quite confident that our share price will perform between now and FID, and when we need to raise that balance of that equity to build our project. And we can see us financing this relatively easily over the next 18 to 24 months.
Well, that's really good that there's sort of government funding almost. They're already showing a significant interest in the project. So that's interesting.
We've gone through extensive due diligence by the US government. We've had the DFC on site twice. We've had them visit our pilot plant that we ran in South Africa to prove our process. So there's been huge involvement by the DFC, and they are very excited about this project. It's one of their cornerstone projects in the DFC in terms of the rare earth space. In fact, it's the only rare earth project that they have on their books right now.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. Okay. So I was going to ask about anticipated production, but we've covered that off. So end of 2027 for that one. So what differentiates your project from other rare earth projects out there, listed on the stock exchange?
Well, I think, first of all, we are very high sort of grade for the type of project that we are. Lots of rare earth projects are beset with low grade, 2-3% TREO. These are for hard rock projects. You've got some hard rock projects at 1.25%. And you have Linus in Australia at 8.5% grade, and you have MP Materials in America also at about 8.4% grade. And those two really high grade rare earth projects are finding it difficult to make money in these markets. So these lower grade projects, I think they need higher prices to support going into production. And I think we are going to see that because we do need more of these projects coming into production. Secondly, those projects typically are circa 18 to 20 odd years from discovery to when they will finally get into production. Some of those rare earth projects in development today already been around for 15 odd years, and they're still nowhere near production. So as I said, Rainbow from start to finish, from January 21 to the end of 27, will be in production. That's lightning speed for a significant rare earth project. And then we've got Brazil coming down the line even quicker than what we can bring Phalaborwa into production. And also we've got both in Brazil and in South Africa, we've got very, very low radio nuclide, so very, very low intensity of radioactivity, and so much so that it's known as its background. We've already run the tests on both projects, and you can see on presentations on our website that we don't suffer from any problems beset with having to get rid of radioactive material once you've tried to separate your rare earth oxides out of your rare earth deposit. So that's another big plus. And also the capital intensity. Some of the projects around the world have blown out the capital intensity numbers significantly already in terms of trying to develop the rare earth projects. And at Phalaborwa, we're not seeing that. Our capital number in October 22 was $300 million. I had an updated capital number, which would be very close to our DFS number, published in December last year. So just a few weeks or 2 months ago now. And our revised capital number is $325 million, which is below the level of inflation over the 2-year period. Just if you took the $295 million and increased it for 2 years of inflation at 6% per annum, you'll see that we're below that inflation period. So we're containing our costs very, very well because our original number was a very, very close to being a very accurate number for the capital intensity of our project in Phalaborwa. And, so I think those are all reasons why we differ to some of these other projects being developed around the world right now. And we need a project every year to come into production to feed the demand we're seeing over the next 10 years. So I hope these
Yeah.
projects do get into production. But I hate to say it, Rainbow is the best one of the lot.
Well, it sounds amazing, and as you say, from an environmental point of view, that's really important because a lot of projects, well, projects that have got high environmental risks associated with them, stand too much bad publicity and a possibility of not getting a mining license. So, from that point of view, you don't have that hurdle to get over, which is really good news. Okay, so. With global, down to ask this question from the start, but the global interest in rare earths so high, is there interest in the assets for somebody to purchase? So, is it possible somebody could purchase them before they go into production?
Look, there's always that possibility with the development company. We have a team at Rainbow that between us have built and we've developed, built, and commissioned, well over 50 mining projects around the world because the team at Rainbow and myself came out of mining engineering business where we design, built, commissioned various projects, as I said, around the world. So we have a team who knows how to develop a project, we know how to build it, we know how to do feasibility studies. We've collectively got, sort of over 100 feasibility studies under our belt. So at Rainbow, you've got a team who can deliver, and we are going to be building Phalaborwa. In the meantime, because our EBITDA margin is so good, by the time we've published our BFS and we've achieved our final separation at the purity levels we're targeting, which is 99.5%, so Rainbow is then completely de-risked. It's already de-risked. We successfully produced a mixture with carbonate. We've achieved separation with our process, and we've achieved circa 95% purity. We are now optimizing that in South Africa to 99.5% purity, and that final optimization will be done, as I said, to coincide with the completion of the DFS. Rainbow's then, everyone will see the value of this unbelievable project, which we can apply then to our project in Brazil. So yes, there's a real chance that somebody could say, shit, this is too cheap. This is worth, circa well over $1 billion. So let's make a bid for them. So I'm not saying that's impossible, but right now the intention of the Rainbow team, and our chairman's also got a lot of experience in developing projects. We have got the team to go and take this into production, and that's our focus.
Okay. So future news flow. What sort of news can we expect over the sort of short and medium term that investors should get excited about?
Yeah, so we are continuing optimization of our lead circuit, which was part of that $325 million updated capex number I mentioned we published in December last year, and we are seeing great opportunities to improve our capital and OPEX, even though we've done a good job on optimizing that flow sheet, and we'll be making some announcements on that optimization fairly soon. We also we anticipate some positive announcements on where our development with Mosaic is going on the Uberaba project, and these announcements are within the next quarter or so, and then we'll see further separation and purity levels being achieved on our separated rare earth oxides, which will be another set of news flow all coming out in the next 6 or 9 months. And then finally, at the end of the year, we're still on track to publish our bankable feasibility study, which will highlight just exactly how good the NPV of this project is, and that'll be the final sort of document that the market will be able to see that the massive value that sits in Rainbow, and hopefully we can unlock that as a team going forward.
So there's some big ticket item news to come out fairly soon, really, isn't there? So that's good. Okay, my final question was the going concern statement in the accounts. Obviously, for investors, that's always a concern of needing a capital raise, although, everybody always needs to do a capital raise. But obviously, there was that statement there, and I think it unsettles private investors a little bit. So I just wanted your comments. What would you say to those private investors who perhaps sitting on the side, worried about a capital raise? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, the going concern statement is typical for all junior mining development companies. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. And you're right, development companies do need to raise capital as they go through this path from, I'm talking about a typical project now, which is drilling, sort of test work, scoping or PEA, then pre-fees, then bankable feasibility and so forth. And they're continuously raising capital. So you'll see that at Rainbow since 2020, all the capital raises we've been able to do have been at a premium to our share price, which I'm very proud of. We also did a very good non-dilutory deal with Ecora last year, which is a royalty deal. Now, very importantly for the Palabora project in South Africa, this is not a mining project. So you don't have typical mining legislation that would normally be associated with a project like this, like 26% shareholding by black economic groups, empowerment groups, and we don't have a government royalty because it's a chemical processing plant, processing a chemical stack and producing a mixed rare earth oxide, which is a chemical. So we raised $10 million on a 0.85% royalty, which is extremely good deal for Rainbow, and which Ecora we're very happy with, by the way. And I think this shows the market that management are very protective of dilution. We're looking after shareholders' interests. Adonis Brulis, the chairman, and myself we're the two biggest shareholders in Rainbow until TechMed came in when they did the government, $50 million government US government deal. They took 12% of Rainbow Topco. So they're a critical minerals fund funded by the Qatari government and the US government and private investors in TechMed. And as I said, they now own 12% of Rainbow. But as I said, basically, that was also done at a premium to the share price. So we've got a very good track record of looking after shareholders, and we funded right through to the completion of the DFS. And I think that should give private investors comfort that there's no capital raise in the near term that they have to worry about.
Yeah, I think the key point there is that the directors are aligned with shareholders. You've got a lot of, as you say, skin in the game. You both big shareholders, so it's in your interest to make sure that any capital raise is at the best price possible. So, and as you say, historically you've always done it at a premium. You've created inventive ways to raise money without diluting shareholders. So there's not to say that couldn't happen again in the future. So, for me, as I say, personally speaking, I think the chart looks really good. I think rare earths are hot topic of conversation amongst world leaders. It doesn't get any better than that, and I think investors will cotton on. And I think there's the news behind rare earths is going to continue certainly for the next couple of years, isn't it? Probably longer than that. So hopefully investors' sentiment gets behind it. So, but for me, George, that was all I wanted to ask today. It's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. Thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully we can catch up again soon.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners. By the way, I was interviewed on CNBC primetime, lunchtime TV today, and CNBC being a global news channel, all about this rare earths subject that's so typical at the moment. So I think the timing of your podcast is very good, and it just reinforces the interest that we're seeing globally, and so much so that I got interviewed, as I mentioned today, by CNBC. So I thank you once again for taking this opportunity to interview me, and hopefully your listeners are happy with what they hear, and they will take a serious look at Rainbow. Thanks very much once again.
Yeah, thank you, George. See you again soon. Thank you.
Okay, Justin. Thank you. Cheers.